How's it going, everybody? In this video I want to talk about some Cyber Dragon rulings you should probably know if you're going to play this deck. This isn't really beginner's advice per se, it's more things you should probably just know in general. This is definitely not an all-inclusive list. I do think we should continue to make a video like this maybe every month or two on new things that we come about in the community. I definitely missed some things below, so if I did, please let me know and we can add it to the next video and make the videos even longer and more in-depth. Without further ado, let's get into the first one. First card we're going to talk about is Cyber Dragon Hers. One of the important things about this card is when it gets sent to the graveyard and when you select a Cyber Dragon monster from your graveyard, it does not target, so your opponent cannot respond and DD Crow that specific Cyber Dragon or your target because this card does not target. You should definitely know that because you don't want your opponent to say target and then you pick the card and they do something with that, because that's not how this interaction works. Also, I misspoke before, it's a Cyber Dragon, not a Cyber Dragon monster. Also, I want to talk about the other effect. If you do special summon this card and you make it level 5 and it gets sent from the field to the graveyard, you do not get to have that secondary effect of adding a card from your graveyard or deck to your hand or a Cyber Dragon. This card is only one effect and once per turn. Next up is Cyber Dragon Core. This effect is mandatory, so if you do summon this card on the field, you have to activate its effect. You can't say nah. You have to do it. So the only way to get its secondary effect to activate first is if you already have this card in your graveyard, and then you can banish it, activating its secondary effect. However, if you first summon it, you have to activate the effect. You can only activate one of these effects once per turn and only once that turn. So if you activate multiple Cyber Dragon Cores, they will not activate. I do want to also mention the graveyard effect again. If it is in your graveyard and you do banish it, you can special summon any Cyber Dragon monster from your deck. Any monster that's Cyber Dragon, not just Cyber Dragon itself. I feel like people forget that, even myself. You can summon Naxter, special summon that. When Naxter special summoned, then you can target something else in your graveyard to get some pretty nice combo off. The next card is Cyber Dragon Veer. Really basic thing to know is this will turn off machine dupe for some monsters because it gives everything plus 500 attack and defense. So if you do play Core and chain Veer to it, and then you activate machine dupe and target Core, it will not resolve because it is not a valid target. It will have 900 attack. So just know that if you're going to do that, do not chain it to Core. Just make sure the machine dupe target is valid. The main thing though about Cyber Dragon Veer I want to mention is its ability to chain block. Let's say I have Core and Veer in my hand and the opponent has an Ash Blossom. What's going to happen is I'm going to normal summon Core, and assuming this summon is successful and it doesn't get Solemn Judgment or anything like that, priority would then pass back to me, where then I can chain Veer to that normal summon because it is a Cyber Dragon, and Cyber Dragon Core's effect will activate. However, I will make this chain link 1 and this chain link 2. I think it actually has to be chain link 1, chain link 2. You can't decide. I mean, why would you anyway? But because this happened first, and when it is normal summoned, it will activate. But I chain this to the normal summon. I might be wording this a little bit weird. If you can explain a little better in the comments, that'd be pretty helpful. But in short, if you normal summon Core, you have the ability to summon Cyber Dragon Veer and your opponent cannot Ash the Core because of how the chain blocking works. This doesn't work with every single interaction, so please be wary of that. Next up, let's talk about Cyber Dragon Dry. If you do use this effect to make everything level 5, it does lock you into machines for the entire turn, and it is a hard lock restriction. So if you summon, let's say like an Anima or something before you summon Dry and activate the effect, you can't do that. It has to be the entire turn. So I do want to talk about Dry's secondary effect, that if it is banished from the graveyard, you can then target a Cyber Dragon you control and it can't be destroyed by battle or by card effects. So how this would work is you would most likely use Overload Fusion because that's like the main way you're going to banish it. So if you play Overload Fusion, you banish this from the graveyard, then you can target a Cyber Dragon on the field and it can't be destroyed by card effects. I was also told you can use Dry's banish effect to target a Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon to make it basically indestructible. However, this isn't a Cyber Dragon when it's on the field, so I don't know how that interaction actually works. If someone could clarify below, that'd be great and we can update it in the next video. However, I will try to get some duel with this and actually get that effect going, but I have not had that interaction actually happen yet. But yeah, just something to know. One thing I want to note about Naxter is if you do summon this card and you do target a machine monster from your graveyard and either the target gets removed from the graveyard, so let's say you have a Cyber Dragon Infinity in the graveyard and you special summon Naxter and you target this, if this card gets removed from the graveyard by some reason, the target is no longer valid and it's still resolved and you are locked into machines. Same thing if the effect gets negated. I guess because it has to do with the activation of the card, not necessarily about the resolution. Next up, let's talk about Cyberdark Chimera. So with Chimera, you can only banish from your graveyard if you discarded a spell or trap and got the power bond to your hand, and it's only that turn. So even if you have a power bond in your hand, if you did not activate Cyberdark Chimera's effect to discard and get the power bond to your hand, you do not have the ability to actually banish like a Cyber Dragon from your graveyard to use as fusion material. This card also does have a secondary effect. If it is sent to the graveyard, you can send one Cyber Dark monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different name than other cards in your graveyard. Not really going to use it in this current build, but it is a secondary effect in case you want to just get your Cyber Dark Claw in there for some reason. So Cyber Dragon Nova, a lot of text on this card, a lot of good effects. The first thing is you can only activate its effect to detach and special summon a Cyber Dragon from your graveyard if you already have a Cyber Dragon in your graveyard. Like, there has to be already one. If there is not, you cannot do that. However, even if you detach a Cyber Dragon and send it to the graveyard, as long as you have a Cyber Dragon monster in the graveyard, you can take that same Cyber Dragon and special summon it to the field. To activate Nova's effect, there has to already be one in the graveyard, but then once there is, then it doesn't really matter what is in there and what gets sent, because it's just, yeah, how it is. But yeah, if there's no Cyber Dragon in your graveyard, you can't detach and special summon anything. However, once there is one, you can detach and then actually use the same material and summon it. I mean, in this case, obviously what you can do is you can summon Naxter and then use Naxter's ability to summon Core or Cyber Dragon. So let's talk about the possession text on this. When this card is in your possession and is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon a fusion machine monster from your extra deck. Your possession is like anything. So if it's on the field and you get in the bureau to get sent to the graveyard, you still get that effect. If you summon this card and it gets Solemn Judgment or Solemn Strike, you get to special summon from your extra deck. If this card is in your extra deck and it gets sent from the extra deck to the graveyard, it is still in your possession, you get to special summon. Basically, if this card gets sent from the extra deck into your graveyard by something your opponent did, other than by battle, you get the special summon. So just keep that in mind. Super powerful effect. One thing I want to mention about this is you cannot summon cards like, let's say, Cyber, Dark, and Dragon off of this effect. And the reason for that being is this card specifically states how this needs to be fusion summoned. This must be either fusion summoned or special summoned by attributing one level 10 or lower Cyber Dark fusion monster equipped with Cyber and Dragon. So if you do not meet those conditions, this cannot get special summoned. Let's talk about Infinity and the ability to suck up an opponent's attack position monster. If this attack position monster is an Xyz monster with material, and you target this to attach it to Infinity, the materials of the Xyz will actually go to the graveyard, and you will only get one monster. That makes sense, it's pretty fair, but at the same time, it's something that I feel like might go over some people's heads. So just make sure you're only picking up the one card that you selected, not the Xyz materials underneath. You can also only summon Infinity once per turn. That's it. You can't do twice. Very sad. Next up, let's talk about Mega Fleet and Fortress Dragon. They're going to have quite similar interactions, however not entirely the same. One thing to note is if these cards get negated by something like an Infinite Permanence or like an Effect Veiler or Forbidden Chalice, these cards will go to 0 attack and 0 defense. They will not remember per se the attack that they had before their effects were negated. Something to keep in mind, and it will not go back again. So if you use Chimeric Fortress, you use 2 materials above 2000 attack. Your opponent Forbidden Chalices it goes to 0. At the end of the turn, it stays 0. It does not go back. One thing to note too is these are both special summons. They are not fusion summons. They are special summons of fusion material monsters. Definitely keep that in mind. There's some cards that say, like, I guess even Dimensional Barrier, that can say, oh, you can't fusion summon this turn. But this is not a fusion summon, it's a special summon. Just some little keywords to know. So specifically talking about Mega Fleet now, if there is a Pendulum monster in your opponent's extra monster zone, you cannot use that material or that card as material for this special summon. The reason for that is this card specifically says this must be special summoned by sending the above cards from either side of the field to the graveyard. The Pendulum monsters go from the field to the extra deck, so this card can not necessarily resolve or properly get summoned because it needs to go to the graveyard. Also with this card, you can only use material in the extra monster zone that's only those 2 zones that are specifically up here. If you have a link card and it points to this zone and this zone, these are not extra monster zones, only these 2 up here, extra monster zones. So you can only use, again, those 2 zones. Anything else is just a normal monster zone. One thing to note too about these is you do not need to use your own monsters. If your opponent has a Cyber Dragon on their field in some other machine, you can summon Chimeritic Fortress Dragon to your side of the field by sending those cards because the card specifically states it. Same thing with Chimeritic Mega Fleet. You can do the same thing. Something neat little trick to keep in mind. Might tilt your opponent, but it is something to know. Next up, let's talk about Chimeritic Rampage Dragon. This is a big one too, you probably already heard of it, but this effect of popping spell and trap cards on the field can miss timing because it's a when. One of the best ways to explain how Chimeritic Rampage Dragon can miss this timing is, let's say your opponent does something, it doesn't matter what it is, and in response you activate Cyberload Fusion, banishing XYZ, sending whatever to your graveyard, and then you summon Chimeritic Rampage Dragon. How the chain will resolve is blah 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 will happen, then Chimeritic Rampage Dragon will be able to fusion summon on this card, and then your opponent will do blah 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 blah, it doesn't matter. Because once a chain goes from 1 to 5, let's say, whatever, it goes backwards and nothing can get reactivated in that chain. Because this card specifically says when this is fusion summoned, then you can activate this effect, you don't actually get to use that effect because the chain still needs to resolve, and so technically, because of the wording and the timing of it, it will miss. So just to get around this and make this never happen, if you want Rampage's effect to trigger to pop spell and traps on the field, don't change Cyberload Fusion to anything, make sure it's first in the chain. Let's talk about Cybernetic Overflow. The most important thing here is it does not target, and that's super important because once cards start targeting other cards and stuff, it gives the opponent a lot more ability to respond in specific ways. The ability for this to not target makes it super good. You can also activate this card if you have no Cyber Dragons to banish. I mean, I don't know why you exactly would want to, but you can if needed. Let's talk about the secondary effect. If this card is destroyed by a card effect, you can add a Cyber Spell or Trap from your deck to your hand. This can be chained with your own cards, such as like MST or Cosmic Cyclone. So let's say you were to use this card and you had a MST here, you also could flip over the MST with the quick effect and target this to destroy it, and it will this card will still resolve because it's not negating. This card gets sent to the graveyard. You will get that effect to search, but you also will still resolve your normal effect to banish XYZ cards on the field. This is a tough ruling though, because there are some cards out there that will negate and destroy. If it says negate and destroy, you will not get the effect, and it's because of where this card is on the field per se. So if it is negated, it's technically not on the field, and this card specifically says it must be on the field and destroyed. The difference is when it's MST'd or Cosmic Cyclone, this card is on the field and you target it to destroy it on the field. It's not negating, it's not in that limbo period. In short though, I think the best way to remember it is if something says destroy, it pretty much destroys it. However, it says negate and destroy, you don't get that effect. Let's talk about Repair Plant. You only need to have a Cyber Dragon in your graveyard on the activation of this card. So let's say you were to activate Cyber Repair Plant and you have like a single Cyber Dragon in the graveyard, and your opponent DD Crows the Cyber Dragon and banishes it. Well, does this resolve? And it's yes, because it's only with the activation of this card. As long as there was a Cyber Dragon in the graveyard when you activated it, this card resolves. Next up, let's talk about Rev System. This does not target anything. So you can play this card and select a Cyber Dragon, but your opponent doesn't get to know what card you're selecting because again, it doesn't target. So your opponent cannot say, I'm going to DD Crow your selected card from the graveyard, because that's not how this works. It just says special summon from your hand or graveyard, not target, then special summon. Also keep in mind the special summon monster cannot be destroyed by card effects. I feel like people forget that, and it's super juicy. Talk about Cyberload Fusion. So there are two things with this card. First one is you can use face down defense position monsters as material as long as you flip the card up first to reveal that it is a valid target or a valid monster for the fusion summon that you're selecting. Then it can go back to the deck. But yeah, you can use face down defense position monsters. The other thing with this card is once you do fusion summon using this card, only that fusion summon monster can attack for the rest of the turn. Now, this is best used after all your monsters already attacked because there is no restriction to cards attacking prior to that. So what you can do is attack with all your monsters, quick play this, and then fusion summon, and then you can still attack with that. You can also use monsters that already attacked that turn. So you can get some pretty nasty damage in there if you time this quite correctly. Eternity is a card that I think has a lot of text on it and a lot of things we gotta break down. However, for this purpose of this video, I just want to mention the one thing. The effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard this turn. Your opponent cannot target fusion monsters you control with card effects, and they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. I like that effect a lot, but it is not a quick effect. I think it'd be super broken if it was, but man, I really would like to see that. This is not a quick effect. If it is, maybe I'm playing it wrong in Master Duel, but the only way to activate this is during your main phases, and you can't activate it in response to anything, which makes this kind of bad because it's open to so much removal. But just remember that this effect is not a quick effect, which makes it a lot worse. But anyway, we went over a pretty good amount of cards in this video and a lot of different interactions, and there's still so many things that we need to discuss. However, for this video, I'm going to keep it at this. Definitely let me know what else we can add for the next video. I'm going to be continuing doing some more research and trying to get some weird interactions going on to see, and kind of push the limits of maybe the deck or just some interactions. This game's pretty complicated, not gonna lie. Like, as I'm playing more and more and learning more, I'm realizing that like there's just so many little things that I'm like, wow, that's actually a thing, or that actually happened. But yeah, let me know down below just some weird interactions you might have had, and maybe some other rules that you think are important to know. Definitely will add it to the video. For now, that's all. Take care, keep studying, keep playing, and keep loving Cyber Dragons. Stay tuned for some more Cyber Dragon videos. Until then, I'll see you around.